Hello and welcome to the Geek Quorum.
It's a fracking podcast.
I'm Brian.
I'm Bern.
Today we're going to be talking about The Mandalorian, the new show on Disney Plus that premiered earlier this week. Oh, I should say this is a spoiler-full review and discussion, so everything from this point is going to be talking about all the plot points involved with the show. So, fair warning there. So, how about initial thoughts? Were you pleased? Did it last episode we talked about some of the things we thought the show would be about, like being in the frontier, being a Western, a proxy for a Western. Did you feel that it met those criteria?
Yeah, I thought the whole show was really well put together. I really do have to kind of curse George Lucas though, because I feel like he has kind of ruined me in some respects. I think I get so guarded around Star Wars now. So whenever something about Star Wars comes on, I have to kind of prepare myself to hate it in some way. Like I have to be prepared not to like it. So in I hate the fact that I kind of go in this kind of a little tense, a little ready to kind of be maybe overly critical. Because
Mm.
I think the first time I viewed this, uh, I was a little overly critical. I mean, I think there are some worthwhile critiques, but I enjoyed it so much more the second time once I was able to kind of take a deep breath and relax and just kind of enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I actually found it to be really a strong first episode. I understand there are some critiques about the character being sort of just a blank slate. I mean, obviously, we only see him with his helmet on, and some of the criticisms I'm seeing have been like, well, we wouldn't see what he looks like, and how much emotion can you get from a character that you only see uh, just a static helmet that doesn't change? Well, actually, a lot. It's Although there's a major character in Star Wars that people just could tell just with a turn of his head what he was feeling, and that was Darth Vader. And I mentioned in a previous podcast a couple of years ago, during I think it was our holiday gift guide, I said a really good thing to get was Marvel Comics Darth Vader comic series, and that even more so than the the movies was limited to static frames of panels that couldn't have any movement at all of the actor or the character moving their heads and just with a tilt or whatever. But even just the structure of the helmet itself and the form of it, you could tell whether the character Darth Vader was angry, had bemused or whatever, just by the angle, just because of the way the lines and everything worked, and you're just so familiar with the character. And I kind of felt the same way with this Mandalorian. He was, just with a turn of his head or a tilt, there was a lot that was conveyed in just in that alone. And so, and also I think it was this very conscious and wise decision not to show him right away. I think that's something they're going to unpack over time, and that will be a nice reveal when he takes it off and you see what this guy looks like. So I thought it was fine. I don't think that was really a big deal.
And I think, yeah, I mean, part of this show, which is going to be very different, is for the universe, and I think we just kind of have to tune ourselves to is the fact that, yeah, as you said, this is going to take place over time. So once I kind of brought that perspective into my viewing, it was like, okay, I've got 5 hours and change with this character over the next several weeks. Let's see what happens. But I think what really struck me the second time I watched it, because I do have to go back because the criticism that this character, it's hard to connect with this character. I think is a fair one. Um, this show is only 40 minutes long, and it's a tight 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the character development that they were attempting, I just felt just a tiny bit flat. I mean, he has like almost, I should have counted how many lines. He's got
Right.
like 8 lines the
Yeah.
entire time. And most of it is just the shootout at the OK Corral, which is awesome. But at the end of the show, at the end of the first episode, I was really struck, kind of asking myself, I'm like, do I care about this character? And the answer is pretty quickly, not yet. I mean, I like this character in the sense that he's a badass, and maybe that's all they're trying to establish with us is like this is a professional. This is just a badass bounty hunter, and that's
Mhm.
fine. But I didn't care about, even though I think they were trying to make that happen with, flashbacks of him as a child fleeing, the empire, etc. I didn't connect with him. But I
Mhm.
will say, just as my at the end of the second viewing, what dawned on me in the last frame of this show is I realized the show doesn't really start, or the series doesn't really start until the last frame of the first episode,
Mhm.
right? Like, I felt all of this actually was just a very simple setup to really what is the main story that is about to kind of unfold before us.
Yeah, I think the setup was like an introduction, almost like the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the first 5 minutes is this guy who you don't know anything about. He does some badass stuff. He escapes, and you get a quick study of what he's about, but you don't really know anything about him. But you're immediately hooked. You're like, I want to follow this guy. He looks really cool. And I think they did the same thing here. He does some of his trade. He goes and at the end does something that was really deemed hard because others had failed. And then at the end, there's the reveal of like this little MacGuffin of let's just say it's the little Yodette, and where's that going to take things? And so I think from here the story will bloom and we'll see what happens. And so I was okay with it. I think again it was a short 40 minutes. If it had been like an hour or maybe longer, without getting too much connection with that character, it would have been like, okay, I don't know if it would have worked, but the brevity was pretty good, and I think it served its purpose really well.
Yeah, the one thing I certainly noticed about this, and this just has to come. This certainly is about how it kind of plays off certain expectations, or want what I wanted for the episode. This episode was directed by Dave Filon, I believe, or Filon. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. But he's the same showrunner for Star Wars Rebels
Right.
and Clone Wars. My sense in his style is that on one end of the spectrum is Game of Thrones, and I'm going to say it's dark, right? There's a certain heaviness to every scene that takes place. It certainly feels more adult, um, to the extent that it can. And then on the other end, you have kind of Star Wars of the Clone Wars or Rebels variety, which is still catering to both adults and kids by and large, but I would say it leans towards a lighter tone, to a more
Mm-hmm.
accessible tones
Mm-hmm.
towards kids. And I think a part of me wants this show to be of the more Games of Thrones variety, the leaning to be a little darker, to be a little more somber. And I certainly love the humor. I think the humor in the Star Wars universe is really important. But there was just this slight tone in how they approached certain scenes and shots where it felt a little, ever so slightly more cartoony, when I would
Mm-hmm.
rather have veered towards being more scary
Yeah,
in
that's
in
interesting.
that respect.
I think you might be disappointed expecting darker. I don't think Disney is going to, on their premiere platform, do that. Maybe down the
No, and
road.
you're
I think that the thought with the Star Wars films that there were supposed to be the Star Wars stories that were going to possibly be different in tone. I think I don't know that that's going to happen. If
no,
you
I don't think
scroll
so.
through Disney's Plus's catalog, on the website or on your app or whatever, you look at everything and there's not a lot of dark.
No,
It's Disney, so
I know.
I don't think that's going to be in the cards. But I hear you. But I'm okay with it. I feel like they're in good hands. I think the director and the writer both have a sense of it, especially the director, because like you said, he was on the animated series and he's been living in that for many seasons, and that's years and years. That's like even more than just a director taking on a year and a half of production or 2 years of making a movie. He's been doing it for who knows how long. I guess the thing that I was struck by was I thought they did a really good job of taking elements of the Star Wars universe that we'd all seen before and integrating them in a way that was just seemed organic. And to me, there was a plus. I was thinking, I was watching it, like this is like a remix of all the really good things of Star Wars. They had the Gonk droid, they had the little
Hmm.
sentry droid with the little orb that comes out. They had, just a myriad of aliens and things we'd seen before, different, the Greedo types and you know, you could go on and on. And so that was great. They had speeders. I love the speeder that was like Luke's land speeder, but it was not. And it was all clunky and it was falling apart, and that was great. So, but my concern, or not really concern, it's more of a worry. It's like I don't want this remix to be like one of those remixes of a song that they take a song that's 3 minutes and they make it eight, and with like extra loops and whatever. And it's like I don't want every episode to be like, oh, okay, every 3 minutes we're going to see a callback to some object we've seen in some other movie. I don't want that because that's a remix too far. So I thought it was really well done in the first episode. I'm hopeful that it doesn't just grow out of control in subsequent episodes.
I do agree. I hope they quickly dial back on the amount of kind of little Easter eggs and things they put in to help anchor the audience into the Star Wars universe. It felt a little heavy-handed at times,
Mm-hmm.
but always appropriate.
Yeah.
By heavy-handed, maybe the better word is it felt a little more pandering a little
Mm.
bit to the fans. It's like I want to put in these, highly recognizable, almost cult-like nods to the original trilogy.
Yeah. In the future episode, if there was this is an example. In this episode, I mentioned the little door robot that comes out and it's an orb and it opens up and it call back to Jabba's palace. Just to avoid the pandering, like you said, I would want them to change that in some way, like have some sort of droid at the door, but don't literally like just take the asset from a previous film, modify it in some way. And I mean, they kind of did that with the land speeder, but just expand a little bit. We don't need to see.
Well, I mean, it's like the Nest doorbell, right? Like
Yeah,
everyone has
could
one,
be exactly good
you
point.
know?
Right,
Like
right. That
there's
way.
some company out there that makes these things and they sell them, and I'm sure there are ads on whatever kind of television exists, and everyone feels they have to have one, but no one wants to do the wiring into the door like it's a pain in the ass. But eventually, you get one.
Right, I get it. Let's see. So let me just have a section of the episode that we're talking about that's like things that were really cool. I'm not going to be the only person that says this, I'm sure, but obviously the team up of what was sort of Boba Fett and IG-88, but they were not. They were stand-ins. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like every fan's dream that they've wanted to see for a long time, and it met expectations. I was blown away by that, and I was especially concerned when I saw the production photos of IG-88, and I was like, I don't know how that's going to work because I had the action figure. I had seen in Empire Strikes Back this very stiff character that barely moved and it was very spindly and didn't. For A, how is that a functional droid to do anything? And B, a bounty hunter that's supposed to be like really lithe and be able to like make reactions and movements, and they figured it out. I love the rotation aspect, and I still think his ambulatory nature would be difficult because he's kind of tall, and the way his legs move, or I'm still not too sure about how that would work in real life. But I thought that was just really well designed. That was really good.
I know. And I was all getting ready. I was like, oh my God, here they're setting up this perfect pattern, right? Like there's a hero and there's a droid counterpart. So I thought they were going to kind of set up the series to have this kind of this buddy. This is the Chewbacca, or this is your C-3PO, whoever your kind of the buddy is in the film. And then of course he blows him away,
Yeah.
which is great and perfect for the story. But I was just like, my heart sank for that moment. I'm like, oh, sorry, no, don't get attached to that character. They're gone.
Yeah. Of course, in this episode, they do establish a lot of things. They establish that the Mandalorian, the still unnamed Mandalorian, doesn't like droids. That's a thing they established early on. They establish very nice, subtle, clever way his first capture when he's going through the ship, and you get to see different aspects of the ship, the armory, different things like that. And I love the way they kind of just very casually exposed that world of oh, this is a puck. This is how it works, and how that is used as the bounty. And if it's a really special bounty, you don't even get a puck. It's this other thing. And I really liked how they slowly doled out some of that information. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and they didn't feel like there was a whole bunch of expository that was necessary around all of these kind of elements of the universe. Like that's another aspect of the original trilogy and of J.J. Abrams, the sequel trilogy that I really like, which is, and because George Lucas, I don't think has that in him in the stuff that he writes. I think George Lucas likes to explain everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your character has to, like when they go into Jax's bar in Attack of the Clones, like you can't just kind of be in the space and experience the space without the characters kind of introducing all of this dialogue to help explain who this character is, or what this diner is, and how long it's been there, and how you're connected to this, whatever. Like, who cares? Doesn't matter. Just kind of put the detail out in the universe, build the world that way. Don't explain it. Let our imaginations do the work, and just kind of move on with the story.
One other thing I thought was really a nice touch, and sort of sets up possibly for later, or at least the Mandalorian lore itself, is the concept of the bits of armor that they have is almost like honoraria, like you earn to get this new component that will enhance your armor and also your standing, basically. It's almost like a ranking system. It's like, oh, that guy's got that much of that, whatever element it's called, I forget. But like if you're decked out with like the best stuff, then it's like, oh, okay, that guy's a badass. He's really been doing his job. So I thought that was cool. And I guess we could
But
also
Brian,
just touch
okay,
on the
hold on.
fact that
I have to take issue with the whole armor thing. I love the armor, and I was thinking the same thing. So I want to just quickly get that out of the way.
mm-hmm.
But am I the only one who I'm like, this is the worst armor system invented ever? Over 50% of your body is exposed, and the only thing between you and a laser bolt is a piece of fabric. The rest
Yeah.
of it just seems to be kind of stuck on with sticky tape, your pollards, your
Oh, yeah.
gauntlets, your
Oh, for
leg
sure.
coverings. So you have to be a pretty confident bounty hunter to put on this armor, because it's not really covering your whole body at all. I
Yeah.
mean, even knights had chainmail under the plate mail.
Right. No, I
This
agree.
is just this is
I
like
thought there was,
maybe
if there's any complaint that I did have, it was sort of like, there's the term when people talk about issues with stories of plot armor. And I was like, well, there literally was plot armor here. Where it's like sometimes he got shot and it would reflect off. And it's like, well, I was lucky because it actually hit that one piece. And I
right.
guess if you're just a starting Mandalorian and you just have to think the basic, who knows what kind of, armor it is that you get when you first start resin, who knows? If you get a blaster shot, well, it might stop like a knife, but it's not going to stop a blaster shot. And so you're kind of out of luck. So that was like, yeah, it's kind of indiscriminate about, well, if you do get shot in this exposed area, you're kind of screwed. And I mean, the same thing with like IG-88. I was like, IG-8 was taking like lots of IG-11, sorry, was taking a lot of hits. And when it was convenient, the Mandalorian could just like, I'm going to shoot you in that one spot where you're really exposed and vulnerable, and you're gonna, be no longer you're gonna be dead. So that was a little convenient, but yeah, I take your point. That's it's again, it's you gotta.
But you do get a sense it is telegraphing into, I think, a moment in the future of the series in which he completes his, armor, and
Yeah.
I can kind of anticipate this kind of great reveal at that point where he kind of steps into the light and he's wearing all this kind of brilliant armor.
Yeah.
I see that's inevitable at this point.
Yeah. And of course, there's the other Mandalorians that we saw briefly in the stronghold of theirs. I thought that was interesting. I don't really know yet if they're like some vagabond race that's, obviously they're not on Mandalore. Mandalore could be destroyed for all we know. I don't know what the lore is. It was cool to see all the different and various varying sizes and shapes of the different suits and armors and helmets and things like that. That was interesting. Do you want to
Here's
get
so I'm going to
to
jump.
the big reveal at the end? I mean, we've got to talk about that. Like you said,
Yeah.
that's when the story begins. And my question is, is the Mandalorian a true bounty hunter, or is he more? Because if he's a true bounty hunter, he's just gonna take the little Yodette and return him to Werner Herzog. And I mean, maybe he'll do that initially, but I think for the character, sort of like in a Han Solo sort of way, starting at one end and maybe transversing to another on the the lawful versus chaotic scale. um,
Well, yeah, no, I think they're definitely setting. This is going to be the core character conflict,
yeah.
right? They established that the Mandalorian was a foundling himself, right? So
Hmm.
he clearly has a soft spot in his heart for orphans,
Hmm.
and I think this is where his job violates his code,
Right.
and he's going to spend, I think, the rest of the season dealing with that conflict.
Yeah.
Whether he returns to Werner Herzog, which I think is also inevitable,
Hmm.
whether he goes to Werner or Werner comes to him,
Hmm.
one way or another, he's going to have to deal with the fact that he's broken his contract.
Right.
And I think when again, coming back to my first impression,
Hmm.
leading up into that last reveal, I was like, if this show is really just going to be kind of this episodic show where each week the Mandalorian chases a different bounty,
Hmm.
I'll be kind of disappointed. And I
Yeah.
felt like it was on the path to kind of setting up that. And then again, and once you see that last frame, do you realize, and everything kind of sinks in, I don't think this is going to be a show about a bounty hunter. Well, he
Right.
is a bounty hunter,
Right. Right.
but he's not going to be bounty hunting this whole time. At this point, the show is on a path where he has to confront some faction that has a enormously vested interest in pursuing, this species.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to
Right.
say
So I think,
something kind
yeah,
of
go ahead.
radical, and that is at the end of the show and then in that reveal, I'm like, why couldn't that have been one of the pillars of the new trilogy that we're wrapping up in a month? If they had taken the elements of the fallen empire, the struggling factions like we talked about in our last episode, mix that in, and then bring in this new element of there's this Yodette, who could be, we don't know what it's going to be, but the implication is, all right, Yoda was obviously the Jedi Master. He's like the main Star Wars Jedi, and the implication is, well, this could be like the hope for the new force to arrive, the good side of the force or the light side of the force to arise. Starting with that, throw in other stuff too. You can have Rey. There's enough here. I was like, this could have been buttressed with some other elements of story, a, a really major component of what the last trilogy could have been.
Yeah, to me, that last moment, the closest parallel was like, this is the moment Danny steps out of the fire with the dragons. It's that moment where you're just like, you're slack jawed and you're like, okay, now I understand. This is awesome,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think the one thing I think they're setting up for, though, that it'll be interesting if they have to reconcile, is that it is a baby, and if it ages really slowly, you know that within the lifetime of this series, it will only be a baby. There won't be that moment where the baby grows up and comes into some kind of power and surprises everyone. Although, we'll see how special this baby is over time. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that was something that I thought would have been kind of really interesting, is kind of, and it, again, will this just be the main narrative arc for the season, or will this be kind of the backbone of the entire series? Yeah, I don't know, but I was just kind of getting excited for that moment of thinking like, oh my goodness, we get a little Yoda, we get a Yoda get to do Force things. That was really kind of, I think, exciting. But it'll be curious to see how much, in general, how much of the Force really appears in
Mm-hmm.
this series.
Yeah.
Right, and I think like if we just think about where this is in the overall timeline, do the Knights of Ren exist yet? I'd be curious to kind of know exactly. But at this point, Luke has not given up on the Force, right?
Mhm.
Luke is still probably pretty much the galaxy's biggest celebrity at this point. Uh,
Right.
so the Force is not gone yet, right? The Force, in the way that the Force had to reawaken. I don't think we've crossed that precipice where the Force has kind of receded into legend.
All right. So, just final thoughts. I thought it was a really well crafted episode, especially for a premiere episode. They laid out a lot of stuff. They established a lot of things, and they whet the appetite for things to come. And looking forward to talking about this one. I think this is a so far it's met my expectations. I'm happy with it quite a bit.
Yeah,
So you can find us on the web at geekquorum.com. You can also find us on Facebook.
you
Say,
can find us on YouTube.
you can find us on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously we're on YouTube. But if you're listening to our audio podcast, which is again the origin of where we all started, please find us on YouTube because we're actually there now, and can't guarantee every episode is going to be turned into video, but we're going to try and see what we can do.
We're learning. We're learning.
Yeah,
For the
it's a,
people who are watching this, and I'm speaking to you as I look at the camera. See, now I feel like I have to say all these things that normally I wouldn't say in a podcast. But listen, I'm talking to you. If you're here, you're a hardcore fan, and I applaud you because this is early on. And if I was watching this on YouTube, I might be like, dude, these guys are total amateurs. And we are. Hi. Um, as a hardcore fan, um, you more than anyone have the greatest chance to kind of influence and spread the word. So please, I have to beg, and I feel the pain of every YouTuber and podcaster out there. Like, subscribe, do all the things that you do to a video to tell your friends about what you're watching. It makes a huge difference. It's also very validating to us. I got to be honest. It feels good. So please like, subscribe, tell your friends, share the Facebook page. Definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. Um, we're in it. We're having fun. We're learning. It's a little um, what's the word? Shimshod? Ramrod? I don't know what the word is, but the word we're learning. So thank you for bearing with us.
yep. Thanks indeed. Uh, and the jump clock is running down, and that means it's time for us to jump away. But thanks again for everyone for watching, and we will see you next time. Thanks again.